From UC Davis, and he will talk to us about privacy-preserving machine learning, a human imperative.
Notice the question mark at the title. We'll see if I'm right. This will be an untypical talk for me because I will not really talk about mathematics. Usually I talk about proofs, theorems. Today will be a bit different. Yet I hope it has important implications for mathematics. When Anders invited me and I started thinking about the topic of this workshop, deep learning, its importance for data science, I thought more about machine learning, AI in general. I thought more about its impact on our society. Then I ended up thinking about the digital revolution. One of the few revolutions in mankind, we had 5, 6 revolutions. I'm not talking about French Revolution, but Neolithic Revolution, Fire Revolution, these types of revolutions. This is the first time in human history that a few generations can actually observe a revolution. If it is one, we will see. And that made me think more about what I will talk about today. And to illustrate what I'm talking about today, let me start with a story about a random English couple. Let's call them William and Kate. And, well, William decided to work from home today. Kate, his wife, is back in the office downtown. William is at home. It's early afternoon. The doorbell rings, and William's personal digital assistant tells William that a woman is outside by the name of Amanda, and the woman is unknown because the assistant cannot find her in the digital database. William lets her in anyway, welcomes her to the kitchen, and a few minutes later, William's smart refrigerator informs us that William just took a bottle of champagne out of the refrigerator. A few minutes later, the smart TV informs us that William turned on the TV and is watching a romantic comedy with Hugh Grant in the lead role. Half an hour later, the smart TV tells us that the TV got turned off in the middle of this comedy. A few seconds later, the smart bed in William's bedroom informs us that there's some activity on the bed. At the same time, the Google's Nest thermostat, which has a built-in microphone, records some inarticulate sounds and moaning. And, well, Facebook, which collects all this information, Facebook's algorithms decide that maybe very soon William will feel guilty. And therefore Facebook's newsfeed sends William news feeds that will enhance this feeling of guilt. And a few seconds later, William receives on his cell phone an advertisement for a very expensive diamond ring that William should consider buying for his wife's, Kate's, upcoming birthday. Again, a few seconds later, unknown to William, Google, which also observed all this information and which tracks Kate's location, which is still downtown via her cell phone, Google subtracts 100 points from William's happy score. Happy score stands for health and professional and private improvement score, which Google developed in connection with the government. And Google concluded that William is cheating, therefore first-time offenders 100 points off. So now Google subtracted 100 points from William's happy score. William doesn't know yet because he just realized, he got this text about a diamond ring and is wondering if his wife really needs such an expensive ring. A few seconds later, William gets another text about a charitable organization, and which asks maybe William should consider donating £500 to this organization, Maseratis for Monarchs, because that would boost his happy score by 50 points. At the office, Kate's office, Kate meanwhile gets an alert from her app, which is called Alert Citizens Are Happy Citizens, and this alert tells her that her husband just lost 100 happy points. And Yolene's happy score dropped a lot, so therefore she gets an alert. Now, Kate gets a bit nervous because she knows that her husband is working at home, and she knows that he has a history of playing video games and drinking beer when he's working at home. And that can cost him points on his happy score. Of course, 100 points, that's a lot of beer drinking, a lot of video gaming. So she logs into her smart home log and checks the video log and sees that, no, he didn't play any video games today, nothing. She looks at the smart fridge log. He didn't take out any beer, didn't restock any beer, so no problem there. But wait a minute. There's a bottle of champagne he took out, and he doesn't drink champagne, really. Then she looks at the other log in the smart home and sees some activity in the bedroom was recorded. Now Kate gets really nervous, sends some text messages to her friends. She's distraught. Amazon picks up on these keywords in the text messages, notes that a lot of typos in her text messages. Amazon tracks Kate's mood for quite some time. Amazon knows that Kate has a tendency for depression, and when she's depressed, she tends to do a lot of online shopping. Therefore, Amazon sends Kate a lot of advertisement for beauty products, health products, clothing, shoes, everything that makes you feel good, increases your self-esteem. And Kate is really considering buying some of those things, even though she knows it will cost her 50 points on her happy score, because 50 points is a lot, but initially it was 50 points, but the industry got it down to 5 points because they thought it's not really fair to punish people for shopping. But Kate is a multiple offender, therefore the 5 points up to 50 points for her again. So she's thinking if she should buy that. Well, back at William's home, Amanda, William's sister, wakes up. She arrived early morning from Australia and went over to William's house. She hasn't seen him for many years, and she has never been to his house. So she arrives there early afternoon. William, invited her in. We know that from before. And he offers her a glass of champagne because he knows his sister likes champagne. Well, she takes a sip of champagne and she says, I have such a headache from this long flight, from this turbulent flight. I don't really like champagne. William said, well, let's watch some TV, maybe that distracts you. They watch some TV, it doesn't really get better, the headache is terrible. And so William says, maybe you want to lie down, and she says, yes, it's usually a good thing for my migraine. William said, don't use the guest bedroom, use my bedroom because it's darker, and it will be much better for your headache. Amanda happily accepts, walks over to the bedroom of William. Then she tries to lay down, and her headache is really killing her. And you see how Facebook, in her mood detection algorithm, is not using the Hessian regularizar. Therefore, Facebook thinks this morning is really pleasure instead of pain, and gets to the wrong conclusion. Well, Amanda lays down, sleeps for half an hour, wakes up, is in a good mood, and my headache is gone. Looks at William, but William now is depressed. What's up, brother? William says, I don't know, I just lost 100 pounds on my happy score for no good reason. And now my wife lost 50 pounds for no good reason. Something is wrong with the system. Indeed, something is wrong with the system. And let's figure out what is wrong with the system, let's figure out what we can do about it, and let's figure out what this has to do with mathematics. All what I described to you is something that this whole scenery is really something that's not too far away. It's an example of surveillance capitalism. Surveillance capitalism is not something that will happen in the future, it's already happening. So the question in this talk is not, is surveillance capitalism real? It is. But are we happy with it, or do we want to do something about it? And why are really me mathematicians play a key role in this whole thing? So here's the outline of the rest of my talk. I will briefly explain what surveillance capitalism is, if you're not familiar with it, illustrated by examples mostly. Then I will present my own twist to it, because I think we need to expand our toolbox to really analyze and understand these inner workings of surveillance capitalism and how it interacts with machine learning. This is the dialectic dynamics that I'm talking about here, something very strange for a mathematician. I will explain how this leads to a new paradigm, how we think about data, or should think about data, or need to think about data. And at the end, we'll talk about this, how this links to privacy-preserving machine learning. So the danger for our AI is here really not what, let me just jump to this, what Elon Musk thinks, you know, that the robots will take over the world. I like the quote we heard before. There's, of course, a danger of massive job losses, but this is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a different threat, and this threat is here, is real, is happening right now, is what Shoshana Zuboff in her 700-page book calls surveillance capitalism. There are many definitions. One of the definitions she gives is this one here. It's the unilateral claiming of private human experience as free raw material, important is of free, for translation to behavioral data. This kind of sounds not very dangerous, right? Let me explain why this is a big problem. Here's another expression of surveillance capitalism in her own words, and let me read these few lines. By providing free services that billions of people cheerfully use, it enables providers of those services to monitor the behavior of those users in astonishing detail. We're actually far beyond this by now, but let me illustrate this with a few examples. And by the way, I really appreciate the great work we have from researchers at Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so on. So my concern here is not about their work. I have a lot of friends there who do really great work, so and appreciate having them in the audience. So this is not an attack on them. This is an attack on corporate policy. Google is a major player in surveillance capitalism, is even the inventor of surveillance capitalism. And let me give you a few examples how Google is searching us and no longer we searching Google. Let's maybe start with Google Street View map. You know, this is when these cars were driving around, mapping the streets. At the same time, they were recording user passwords and user logins. Google, when we found out, Google said, well, this was just a mistake. We didn't mean to. By mistake, I can leave the window of my apartment open. That's a mistake, that's an accident. But by mistake, this information doesn't flood in my car. You need to write hundreds of lines of codes, time it carefully with all the other codes in your system. This is not something that just happens to you. You need to invest serious work to make this happen. Another example, Google is tracking you all the time. If you use an Android phone, Google is tracking you. Take out the SIM card, Google is still tracking you. You cannot opt out, Google is tracking you. This is something you cannot avoid. We can, of course, look at other examples. Facebook. Facebook, let's take the second example here. When Europe installed its new privacy law, a reasonably good law, last year, 2 years ago, Facebook said, you know, Cambridge Analytica just happened, so Facebook needed to play the good guy, and Facebook said, oh, you know, this law is great, we will embrace it. Even though, you know, we don't have to, for all the other users not in Europe, we will put all users in spirit under this law. Secretly, they switched all users, which would have been all users outside the US, would have actually fallen under this law because they run all users through Ireland for tax reasons. They switched them all to the US law. So they say one thing and then secretly do the complete opposite. Another example from Facebook, there are many ads that apps that share sensitive information, that, you know, the apps that you download with Facebook. You don't know about it, you don't consent to it, it does it anyway. Even though you're not logged into Facebook, even though you're not you don't have an account with Facebook, it does it anyway. Here's another a nice example. You know, Facebook and Google are the only ones. They're, of course, the internet providers. They can track you much better than many other companies. Verizon came up with a cookie that will track you all the time, and they will sell this information, they're doing this, to many companies. And, you know, you may not like it, so what they created is what we call a zombie cookie. You kill the cookie, right, so you cannot be tracked. This cookie recreates itself. You kill it, it recreates itself, therefore zombie cookie. Now Verizon thinks this is not a problem because Verizon said, well, we really do not believe that companies that we sell this information to will create user profiles. Of course, it's the only reason why they buy it, but Verizon said, you know, thinks we're really stupid. But I think we're really, really stupid because also Verizon said this. this zombie cookie is a benefit for you, because if you by accident delete it, here it is again. Delete it, here it is again. Delete it, here it is again. You know, you must be really stupid if you think this is a good thing, but that's what they say. This is all official statements. I'm not making this up. Companies are very careful in disguising that they are tracking you. They employ special companies that hide this tracking. IBM is one example. They get you to download apps, and very, very carefully hidden, we have code that is tracking you, so you cannot see it, you do not know it, and there are companies that specialize in this. Hertz, if you have a rental car, you should know that if it's from Hertz, there's a camera built in that could track you, a microphone that will record what you say. Now, Hertz said, no, we are not using this camera because we don't have the bandwidth. You know, it's not really a good excuse, but no word about the microphone. And the companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon say is, you know, but this is good for you. You know, you give us something, we give you something. That's like you go to the doctor, you share information, the doctor shares information with you. So it's in a mutual interest, right? You give us something, you get something. But here's the difference. It's not like that. If I go to the doctor, there are laws, there's a mutual agreement, there's symmetry. All this is missing here. And I'm not talking about information that you post willingly on Facebook. I'm not talking about the search command in Google. This is clear that they have this. I'm not talking about your IP address. I'm talking about all the other traces that you leave behind, all the things that you have maybe on a cell phone that's completely unrelated to the app that you're using. Has nothing to do with it, doesn't do anything to improve the service. Yet they are extracting this information, selling it, and building a very careful profile of you without your consent. It's time to reflect briefly. 150 years back, we faced, not we, our predecessors faced industrial capitalism, which was based on exploiting nature and controlling nature. It had some good sides, but also some devastating effects, global warming, you know, environmental disasters, and it's just one example. Now we're facing surveillance capitalism, which depends on exploiting human nature and controlling human nature. Can we, you know, when we look back at history, can we see similarities? Can we avoid certain problems that happened there? But this is a really economic system here. This is not just some random companies doing some accidents. There's a strategy behind this. This is a fully developed global system now. It's in the beginning, but it's developing. And the material what they're exploiting is, you know, our private experience. This is what Suboff called this private human experience that is traded and exchanged, you know, for profit. And this is just the first step. You know, the first step was about surveilling you and then selling you, you know, ads that would be hopefully interesting to you. The second step was predicting your behavior, which is important for selling you better ads. But we are already in a third step, which is behavior modification. It's not just about selling you ads, it's actually actively influencing your life by monitoring you up close and making you do certain things which is good for their profit. Which sounds like a conspiracy theory, I know, but it's not, and they will let me prove to you why this is not. If I want to monitor your behavior, not just monitor your behavior, but change it, modify it, I need to be really up close. I need to follow you around all the time. That means I need to get in your home. I need to be up close to you. Then you have a wearable device, so I can monitor you all the time. Smartphones, not enough. Smart home, wearables, Internet of Things, smart cities. This is what we need for them. Smart home is, of course, nothing else than a surveillance home, and the smart TV that you may or may not have, you should know that it is recording you all the time. It has a camera, it has a microphone, and it's transmitting that information to some central database. But this is not, you know, it's not nonsense. Samsung says so. It says, well, you know, be careful what you say in front of your TV, because if it's sensitive information, we send all this to third parties. But then Samsung says, but we're not responsible for the policy of the third parties. You need to deal with them. You know, you're not authorizing them to do that, but they do it, and now it's your problem. Well, it's a viewpoint. VCO is also making smart TVs, and VCO CTO said very bluntly, we charge a premium on dumb TVs because we don't want to miss out on spying on you, because it would mean we lose money. And that's, again, it's a a literal statement. I'm not making this up. So the smart TV is spying on you. You know, if you have no one, you know that if you have one, be aware that you're recorded all the time. Google's Nest thermostat is also recording you. It has a built-in microphone that Google somehow forgot to tell the users. You know, yeah, there's a microphone, but we forgot to list it in the text specifications. This is just one thing. If you're really concerned about privacy, you would need to read about 1,000 contracts to understand the whole privacy laws, privacy regulations that come with Nest. 1,000 contracts. It's impossible. If you do not agree to all of them, Nest will not function properly, so why did you buy it in the first place? The vacuum that you may be cleaning your floor generates maps of your apartment and sells them to Amazon and Google. Again, has nothing to do with being able to vacuum better, right? It's just money making. The refrigerator sells information of your shopping habits to companies, and has nothing to do with the service that it provides. It's a money maker. There are many other items in your home that are spying on you. Spying here means they sell information that you never consented to, has nothing to do with the intent of the service, and you know, do it secretly, as secret as possible. There may be the smart water bottle, a smart vodka bottle exists also, a smart scale, smart bed, kids' toys, adult toys, and other things. Of course, there's the obvious spy in your home that many have been inviting. This personal assistant, Alexa, Google Home, of course they are spying. We know that, right? They're recording what you say all the time. There's no secret there. But they go to the next step. Amazon has a patent now pending where they try to find out keywords and link it to your buying interest and then send you advertisements right away based on what you say in your home without, of course, you thinking about it. Amazon can do even more. They want to have something for a mood detector. You know, Kate knows that meanwhile that this mood detector exists, and there's a patent already issued, no longer pending. But you may say, well, but we have privacy policies. No. Yes, we have privacy policies, but for example, if you are in a fortunate situation that you have diabetes, there are a lot of useful diabetes ads out there. If you download them, already in the process of downloading, you give them automatically the right to access information and even modify information on your cell phone. These diabetes apps, many of them will access your photos and videos. Has nothing to do with diabetes. They do it anyway, pass it on to other companies. And they can activate a microphone, all things that have nothing to do with diabetes, but many of these apps do that. But you can say, but you can opt out, right? Yeah, let's look at these fitness trackers. Of these fitness trackers like Fitbit, those without privacy policy, 76% passed on sensitive information to third parties. Those without privacy policy. Those with privacy policy, 79% passed on private information. So the policy, you'll know where to put it, it's useful. It's really great. But when you sleep at least, then you're fine, right? Well, unfortunately, if you're one of those persons who have sleep apnea, be aware that these machines pass on information about the sleeping habits, if you use the machine or not, to insurance agencies. And even if you opt out, they do it anyway. And your insurance payments may go up based on your habits. You may or may not like that, but medical data for sale. Well, in the UK, it's slightly different. There was the plan to have it for sale in 2013. There was this plan, and patients could not opt out. Of course, there was a big outcry. People then said, no, this is impossible. And then they said, OK, maybe you can opt out. And then they dropped the whole thing. It will come back at some point, but right now, they want people to forget about it. But here's already the problem. You should not be in a position that you have to opt out of your medical data. It's the most private information. If at all, you should be able to choose to opt in. But you should never be in the position that you have to opt out in the first place. Unfortunately, the US Supreme Court thinks differently and decided, no, your medical data are up for sale. We decide so because it's really good for business. So there's a decision in the Supreme Court. We sell your medical data if you like it or not. You can not do anything about it. maybe you want to get completely offline. I'm not having any data out there. It doesn't help because we can still make decisions about you by association. We had this talk about ethics. This is not really for me about ethics at this part. Ethics is very important, but this is just by extrapolation. You cannot escape this surveillance capitalism mechanism, even if you try to be completely offline. So, how did this happen? How got these companies so much power that they invade our privacy under no rules? You know, how did they get away with it? One of the reasons is there's a big part of it is they're operating in a lawless domain. There are laws, but the laws are not really enforced, and they have a lot of lobbyists, at least in Washington, but also in the EU. So there's a lot of misdirection, there's a lot of obfuscation, and there's a high asymmetry in power here, of course. And what they say is, well, you know, there's no other way. We need your data, otherwise the whole thing doesn't work. This is, of course, nonsense, but this is the thing that they sell to our politicians who seem to believe that. But I'm unfair because these companies do care about privacy. Not your privacy, but their privacy. You know, we always hear the excuse, we need to do this for our shareholders. Well, of course, the main shareholders for Facebook is Zuckerberg, the main shareholders for Google is Sergey Brin and Larry Page. So this is really what they mean, because when shareholders said, you know, we want to be clear about the privacy policy and ideas of Facebook, then we want to have the shareholders put forth this proposal. Zuckerberg voted it down by his own power of his own votes. The same for Google. So they don't want anything to leak out in that direction. Of course, Zuckerberg is very concerned about privacy. When he bought his villa in Hawaii, the first thing he did is build this wall around it so that it's private. For hundreds of years there was always beach access, now it's not anymore. But as I said, we are not talking about prediction and surveillance anymore, we're talking about behavior modification. This is the next level, and this is, I think, where it becomes really problematic. To expand the profit and the mechanism of surveillance capitalism, they need to get a step further. This is why we have smart homes. They need to not just monitor you, but steer you in certain directions. This is behavior modification. And I understand, you know, companies always try to change our behavior. If I see a commercial on a TV, the idea of this commercial is to make me buy Coca-Cola. I understand that. The difference here is it's completely different scale. It's invading our privacy in a level we've never seen before. It's done in obfuscation. It's done at a scale that only becomes possible because of the digital revolution. So to give you a few examples how this behavior modification happens. Pokemon Go, a great game, fun for kids. You know, it combines video games with virtual reality. Well, it was a test run for Google to see how it can steer users, and companies paid to have Pokemon Go players go to their location. You have to go there and pick up a virtual item, a token. And then companies like Starbucks paid, and Google made players go there. They thought they were playing a game, really they were pawns in a game. Facebook did a great experiment, great for them, not for us, where they checked if they can change the mood of their users by feeding them different news feeds. And they can do it on a scale, they did it for hundreds of thousands of users. And they checked if I feed you this or this, can I make you feel good or bad? And they said, we do this to improve our services. At the same time, Facebook came out with this tool, FB Learner Flow, which does loyalty prediction. And let's say you like to buy Adidas sports shoes, and all of a sudden I notice you look at Nike shoes. Facebook notices that, can change your mood, can make you feel bad about Nike, sends you some positive other news feeds, then sends an Adidas advertisement, and it can change can enhance your alliance to certain brands. Of course, no connection at all to what they've done above. So, behavior modification. The other things that we will, for time reasons, not go into this. Shaping the perfect citizen. Again, behavior modification. China introduced the social credit score, not the happy score, but close enough. And they say it allows a trustworthy to roam freely, while the other ones, have it hard to get around. It will collect how, if you play a lot of video games, how patriotic you are, and so on and so on. Facebook also has grand visions for us, not of this type, but of another type. And also as Google. They want to solve all their problems for us if we hand them control. So what can we do? This is the time to enhance our toolbox and look at some completely different tools coming from conflict management that I learned many years ago from these two guys. Has nothing to do initially with data science. It's more about understanding conflicts, and this will help us to understand data, which will understand to help us surveillance capitalism and what we need to do about it. Conflicts and conflicts are not the same. They are very simple conflicts which have a right or wrong answer. England has the best soccer teams in the world. Yes. If you look at the current results in the European Championship, the answer is clear yes. Yes, there's only one answer. The other conflicts, which are more complicated, they are called aporias, which traces back to Plato, Aristotle. An aporia is something that has two contradicting statements. Both of them are true, so there's no right or wrong, and they induce each other. This is very different. It's not logic anymore, right? Either or is logic. This is not logic. And understanding these aporias and what they imply is important to understand surveillance capitalism, understanding what machine learning should do or should not do in the future, and how we mathematicians can get involved. So let me give a brief example. Here's an aporia between order and freedom. I can say order preserves freedom, order destroys freedom. I can make a case for both things. Both are true at the same time, and actually they induce each other. If I take away this is no longer true. You need both at the same time. This is an example of an aporia. They're both true at the same time. I can also say it in the other way. Freedom preserves order, freedom destroys order. This conflict, there's of course a conflict here between order and freedom, has no right or wrong answer. There's another answer. It's not a compromise. It's what we call a consensus. A consensus would be reached if we achieve autonomy in this context of freedom and order. Autonomy in Greek means freedom gives itself order. So freedom given to me is not really freedom. Freedom that I give myself order in my freedom. That is, of course, how you do it in practice is a different thing, but this is what would solve this conflict in a consensus sense, in a real sense. Of course, the problem with conflicts, aporic conflicts, is if one side wins, both sides lose. So you need both sides to win. And in the consensus, we have what we call a paradoxical intervention in conflict management. Such a consensus has to be relived every day. It's not done once and forever. And this reminds us of Hegel's saying, something is living insofar as it contains a contradiction. So something that's alive has a contradiction in it. Take the contradiction out, it's no longer alive. And you may be familiar with this thesis, antithesis, synthesis of Hegel. But there's something else with these conflicts. If I'm for freedom, and I'm kind of overlooking this interplay between freedom and order, the necessity of order for freedom, and I'm pushing too much for freedom, I end up what we call in conflict management with shadow, arbitrariness, chaos. Same thing here. I overdo order, I end up in strict control, strict regulation, and I'm losing my freedom. Now the conflict happens here. This is just a negative, nothing is working here. And what can happen is the shadow, this freedom, its shadow, arbitrariness, chaos can turn into control. So if I push freedom further and further and further, I end up with strict control. So it turns into its opposite, its complete opposite. Not in its aperitic opposite, but in its complete negative opposite. This is an important thing to know when dealing with conflicts. Same with public and private, this aporia between public and private. If we move too much in public, we extend it, we go to the extreme, we end up in an unrestricted area. Private, we end up in a secretive mode. We need to know these things, keep it in mind when we talk about privacy, public, and democracy of the internet. So let's look at this again. When China says we have the social score that the trustworthy can roam freely, they replace trust with control, freedom with control, and there is no freedom anymore once you replace in this aporia. If you move here, there's only, you end up maybe with revolution, but there's no freedom at this level anymore. Same with Google Smart City. It surveils you to the smallest detail, and it promises you to solve all the traffic jams, housing will be cheap, the environment will be great, if you just give us control. Then you have the freedom to do what you want. Of course, you cannot be free. So the promise is freedom in exchange for handling and control. This is the Faustian impact that I think is very dangerous. And it goes back to the, the internet was said as being this democratic thing that gives power to everyone. Well, if you have an unregulated internet, it's not freedom of the internet. It's unregulated. It's there for Google and Facebook, to grab whatever they want. It's unregulated. It's unrestricted. So you're not in a freedom. You're in its shadow, unrestricted, and therefore what you get is control and not order. You have no longer the aporia between freedom and order. You are in the shadow where you fight unrestrictedness with very strict control. And what you have is the digital revolution. Instead of giving us democracy, it will give us concentration of power because it turns in its opposite. We need to know this when we talk about how do we go about it. Well, what do we do? We cannot do anything. Let's just surrender. There's nothing we can do. No, I think that's not it. Can we go in hiding? No. Secrecy, as I said, is the enemy of private. We cannot go in simply in hiding and say, well, yeah, I'm not going on the internet. That's not the solution. It's clear we need a Bill of Rights. Martin Sein said this very nicely. We need a new paradigm for understanding what data is, what rights pertain to it, and the real questions are questions about how data shapes society in the individuals. There's something that also concerns us mathematicians. We cannot say, we just do algorithms. We need to be aware that it really has impact, and what impact does it have? It happens not in a societal vacuum. A few things that should be in this Bill of Rights. I'm not going through this. I'm just saying that to enforcing them, we need actually mathematics. For 3, for example, algorithms, how traceable are they? 1, this is privacy preserving machine learning. So, just owning your data is not enough. Because at the moment you go on the internet, you leave a digital trace. So this is not enough. We need to think about data differently. So therefore, this idea of Pentland from MIT, this new deal of data, is completely flawed. You need to really think about data differently. I don't have time to talk about this, and it's actually a good excuse because I just came up with this a few days ago. I haven't really thought it through, but I think there's something like a trialectic mechanism going on. It's not dialectic anymore. It's what I call the trialectics of data. There are 3 aporias clashing here or interacting with here, and we need to balance them, understand them, to really get a digital revolution that works for all of us and to really understand how to combat surveillance capitalism. So it's understanding this properly, I think, will help us getting surveillance capitalism back on track. I'm not against business. I'm not against making money. Absolutely not. It just should be a fair deal. And so what can we do? Well, first we have to stop being comfortably numb. We can't just say, well, there's nothing you can do. No, we can do something. One of the few things we can do as mathematicians right away is look at privacy-preserving machine learning. It's one of the areas that is highly needed. Of course, we need to really understand this new data paradigm properly to do this. Let me skip this. For time reasons, let me skip this and tell you, for example, how this new understanding of data might inform how we go about privacy-preserving machine learning. Let's take a concrete example, differential privacy. There's always accepted a little bit of leakage of privacy is okay. Not in aggregate, not if I put it together in this whole scheme. This little leakage of data can have devastating effects. It's like if I pollute the environment a little bit, it's not a big problem, right? But if we all do it in summary, all together, it is a problem. Same thing here. We need to think about differential privacy in a much more rigorous way. Machine learning and encrypted data, there's not much progress there. We definitely need that. Distributed federated learning, I will not talk about this for time reasons because I'm out of time. On device machine learning, something that I'm working on, if I can put my machine learning on device, it's not communicating with anyone. I can have my diabetes app just talking to me, without interacting with anyone. That would ensure certainly privacy. There's something we've been working on, which we call what happens on the edge stays on the edge. Edge computing, is the opposite of cloud computing. Let me just finish here because I think it's time to wrap up. The point of this was powered by AI. Surveillance capitalism is a real threat, I think, to our society, to our human nature. We need to really not accept this and fight back. We need to fight back because if we really want to have a digital revolution that works for all of us, we need to understand data from a different viewpoint than before. We need to accept this apparatic viewpoint to resolve these conflicts properly. Something we mathematicians usually don't do. It's logic, but this is dialectic. But we need to bring it in. But that's cool because we learn something new. We need to go about this. We can still do our mathematics. We just need to understand the context properly. And my point is here that mathematics is not happening in a societal vacuum. Here we really have impact on the world. We can shape a revolution, and that's a great thing to do. And so I want to finish with a quote by Machiavelli that Churchill used as well. Never waste the opportunity offered by a good crisis. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. It's a really impressive talk. So, any comments or questions to Thomas? Yes.
You get recorded, but it's okay.
Isn't it too late? Once the horse is bolted, there's no point in locking the gate.
Say it again, please.
Isn't it too late? Once the horse is bolted, there's no point in locking the gate.
Well, I think it's like, with global warming, is it too late, so let's not do anything? I think we have to. We have no choice, right? Giving in is not a choice. I think it's not too late. It's late. It's definitely late, but it cannot be too late. I believe we can have it all. We just need to work on it. So I think it's not too late. And we mathematicians are quite powerful, right? We just don't realize it. I think in general, we people are very powerful. We're just a little bit lazy. But it's not too late. For sure not.
Yes.
So I thought that was fascinating. I got a bit lost talking about the aphorias, and I wonder if there's a mathematical approach. So 30 years ago, power on the internet, or economic power, was uniformly distributed. And now it's power law distributed, because there are processes that have evolved that distribution. And I just wonder if there are proposals for new economic models where the mathematical modelling can help you understand the global effects. And I think I sort of prefer a mathematical approach to the...
I think you need both. But I think you need to understand that when you deal with these companies, you need to get this company, this is a real conflict. You need to get to understand the other side. If I believe that Zuckerberg really has some interest, which I think he does, in making the society better, then he needs to understand if he's pushing in that direction, he gets the complete opposite of what he wants. So these operatic conflicts are something that conflict managers deal all the time. They deal with companies like Deutsche Bank, British Petrol. They have these conflicts, and then they bring in at least a few conflict managers who know this. And they need to work through these painful stages of the conflict, denial, and then, you get aggressive, and then you say, let's make a compromise to make it go away. And only after that, if it's an operatic conflict, can you reach consensus, if both parties go through this painful process. Until then, of course, you have to fight back all the time. You cannot just sit there. But I think here we have something completely cool, because we have something that we can do with mathematics interwoven with something that requires dialectic thinking, because we are connected to the real world here in a completely new, fascinating way. I mean, this is really, digital revolution is, if it is one, it's really completely unique, right? When the Neolithic revolution took time, it took, thousands of years. The fire revolution took thousands of years. This is in a short lifespan, a few generations, maybe only 2 generations. We can influence this revolution, but I think we cannot just rely on logic. We need to understand this other part here. It's not an either or. We need both types of thinking.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, let's break. And thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.